Hey, welcome to Clarksville Vibe the Show. I'm your host, Kevin Kennedy Jr., local pediatric dentist here in Clarksville, and I get the great privilege and honor to host the show and bring you people who make Clarksville, Tennessee the best place to live in America. We've been telling stories all the way from episode 1 to today's episode of great people from all different pockets of our community who are doing cool and amazing things and sharing their stories in different ways. We've had the great honor of hosting multiple authors, and today is another person in our community who has spent this long, arduous task of creating content in written form and writing books. You may have seen some of our other authors in previous episodes, but today's is one that I've been really excited about. I think she is someone who totally embodies everything that she has written. So this is not outside advice that she's not living. My wife can attest to it. She knows our guest today very well and has been inspired for her in many ways. And she is someone that we've just been thrilled to have on the show. We finally picked a time now that the book has been released to get her here. She is Megan Evans. She is a women's ministry director at Living Hope Baptist Church here in town, but she has this great new book that we're going to talk about. The title of the book is Permission to Walk, a 40-day journey to unhurried peace. Megan, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited about this one. We joked as we were walking in to record this. I'm flying through my neighborhood, trying to get here on my lunch hour, total in a hurry. And then here we are having an episode about unhurrying your life and having the permission to walk. And so I don't know if I'm in your target demographic, but I would say my life is in need of some of that wisdom that I'm sure you've shared. So thanks so much for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about kind of the theme of your book and maybe what kind of life circumstances led you to wanting to actually get this on paper as a gift to someone.
Yeah, awesome. It is funny how we came about starting this morning, because that is truly what unhurried peace is all about. I think sometimes we want to slow down and we want to follow the Lord, and we hear and we read, and it's true, be still and know that I'm God. But we're still a mom. We still have business and work and all of this stuff. And so we think, well, I have to give up one in order to have the other. And so I think that's where I found myself just struggling as a human, but also as a mom and wife, and just involved in lots of different areas. But my heart craved the stillness that I think God calls all of us to. And so that was really the story I wanted to tell about how God called me to that, to learn his way and his pace.
When do you feel like you first noticed that I wish my life was less hurried than it is?
That's a really good question too. I think, I would long for it. I would be rushing out the door thinking, well, I can't spend time with God. And I'd kind of pass that quiet time chair or whatever on the way out the door. And I just would long for it, like a thirst or a hunger. And I would think, but my kids need this, or I need this, or, I have to do this. We start to think we have to do these things. And that's where the title of my book, Permission to Walk, really was birthed, was we do have permission to have that sweetness and time with God that our soul craves.
Wow. How old do you think your kids were when you noticed it? Was it early preschool stage, or was when some of your older ones got into the elementary middle phase?
Maybe in different ways,
Sure.
in different seasons. I definitely think just as a young mom, I was probably just struggling to learn as I go.
Struggling
just
and
how do
juggling.
you take care of these little, not enough arms. And then I think just as they became more independent, I realized my role as a mom was maybe needed less in physical ways and more in emotional and mental ways to support them and love them. And I do recall my last child going to kindergarten and shutting the door and thinking, now what? I don't even know who I am anymore. And I think it had just been such a whirlwind that I really hadn't allowed myself to slow down. But looking back, I can recall just wanting to. And I think realizing and learning later, it wasn't so much about physically slowing down as it was my focus and just a posture really of embracing God's peace in all the craziness.
Yeah. I do think that's a universally shared story, especially when you become a parent, because that hurriedness, and which is not really a word, but the hurriedness of life just explodes as you become a parent. And, we get the privilege, my family does, of working with some college students who think they're so busy. And then, you talk to some newly marrieds with no kids and they think they're so busy. Their jobs are taking over their life and they don't have any free time anymore. And you just kind of laugh behind the scenes. And then that when you hit that parenting phase, like the busyness can be so overwhelming. And I'm in full stride of it now. My kids at home are, right around that 5 to 7 stage, but just the demands of work, the demands of trying to be a good friend, a good dad, a good husband, it just has you spread so far. And ultimately, I know I still don't even carry the same weight of what I consistently hear moms sharing. And so what a gift that you were able to get it down on paper and share with us. So tell us a little bit about, it's a 40-day journey. So it is kind of a devotional style. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
With the help of my publisher, we really felt like it was best delivered through a devotional format.
Yeah.
And so the way that I organized it was like you would take laps around a track.
Okay.
And so in the beginning of the book, it starts where we kind of would start if we were craving that unhurried peace. We're rushed. We're right in the mess of it, and that's okay. That's where God wants to meet us always in any situation. But I take the reader through just meeting them right there in the rush of everything, and then kind of just undoing. And then at the end, we find ourselves with unhurried peace that Jesus wants to teach. It's his pace of life.
Yeah.
He was a great friend. He was busy. He did a lot of things, busy, thriving ministry and fully God, but also fully man. So he felt the pressures of just the daily wear and tear on our bodies and, all of every capacity of life here on earth. And so we have, a good God that identifies with us in every possible way. And so I think when we learn, he also kept up with things, but made time to meet with the Father. And I think that's where we too can follow that pattern and learn that the pace of Jesus is really what we're all called to live, not more. We have permission to do that. And so I'm excited to take, readers through that journey that I learned myself. And it's one that I've continued. It's a daily battle. We kind of restart that. But I think when we start with learning who Jesus is and what he did, and how he teaches us to live with him by his power and the Holy Spirit, we can learn that this life is really about being a child of God, more than being a good wife or a good mom. Those titles they come with a lot of pressure, and we think, well, to set those aside, that must mean we can't be a good mom or a good wife. We have to sacrifice or choose one or the other. And so Jesus is a life of peace. And when we're at peace with God, we have that when we have a right relationship with him. So it's a mix of all of that in this book.
What do you think when you are starting your journey, and this may be in the book, but what do you think are some things from early on that you had to maybe, let's say, reprioritize or start to say no to in order to create some margin for that peace?
I love that question. And I think I struggled just thinking I could take things off my plate. But I found that didn't take the weariness away. And I think weariness is a word that a lot of our world struggles with today. We're so distracted. And that's a key piece of this book that I wrote is dealing with distraction. Because our faith doesn't multitask well. Our time with God, we need that hydration of his living water daily. And so just to step away from the crowd as we would see Jesus do multiple times, we need that multiple times during our day. And just even if the walls of our heart are the only quiet place we can find, we can still meet with God. And so I think that weariness is just something that definitely I learned was a big part of what I was doing, that even if I was sitting still, I was in a million different places in my head and my heart.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a mindset, but it's also that posture and just learning, to set aside what I can, but then also just learn to embrace.
I think it's interesting you use the word mindset, because I think when you start to challenge someone's priority of how they use their time or how they structure their life, it's easy to become quickly defensive, right? And so even let's say among moms, it's easy to say, it's easy to unhurry your heart when, your kids are 8 and 10. Mine are 2
Yeah.
and 4, and they're little terrorists going around breaking everything and writing on the walls. I don't have time to do that unless they're asleep, and then I like to go to sleep. Or it's easy to, kind of misdirect the conversation and say, well, that's easy to say if you're not working a 60-hour-a-week job. You're only working 40 hours a week, or you're not working an income-producing job, or whatever it may be. How would you, because I'm sure you've dealt with all kinds of ladies and men who are maybe trying to reprioritize their time. How do you help encourage them that they can create these changes regardless of what their starting point is?
Yeah, that's a great question too, and definitely one I think men and women can relate to, and all ages of kids, especially our generation, living right now and growing up in this world of just distraction, our phones and everything. And I think some of it truly does come to being present in those things. I think as a parent, putting the phone aside and enjoying those moments. I think if I looked back at my my younger self, I would have said grace, a lot of it grace. I would perhaps find myself, digging into a deep Bible study, and it was great, but sometimes I would race through it and just try to get the questions done, whereas maybe 5 really deep quality minutes would have been enough for a newborn and a 2-year-old mom. That was, so I think learning to see and let God fill us right where we are. Would have been good advice for me. I had to learn the hard way, but I see
you're talking
that
to me
now.
right now, because it's like, even the time that you set aside is still hurried, because you're like, did I really only get through that much time? Like I'm 38. I'm in the middle of parenting. I have a business. I try to do the best I can at everything. Most weekdays start for me at 4:30, and when I put my kids to bed, or I should say, Adanya I say good night, and Adanya does the heavy lifting of putting them to bed. It's like I'm out, and I've not stopped. I typically am going to the gym. I show up to work at 6:30, start seeing patients at 7:30, and it is just a total rat race. And recording podcasts at lunch, or a business meeting at lunch, and then rat race until 5, and then you try to be dad for these 2 or 3 hours, and where does all the unhurriedness come from? So I know that it's saying no to some things, and so it's as much a challenge for me as it is for a mom, and I think our pressures may feel differently, because for me it's okay, you maybe don't have to see so many patients, or you don't have to spend this time doing this that is still a good and a wholesome thing. You can step back and breathe and exhale.
And saying yes to some of those things that God offers us. I feel like one thing I've learned is, what if we started our day not grabbing that phone by our bed and checking email, but just spending a few moments, maybe not even a full minute, but moments with the Lord, and just this is the day that you've made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And just, I think that's where I used the word posture earlier, but you can do something like that as you're walking to get a crying baby, or, sometimes as a parent, you find that child staring at you that's just, gotten sick, and you have to run and jump out of bed. But, I think too, like just letting that be the first thing was that even in all of this, Lord, amidst all of this, like, you're first today.
Well, you passed through it really quickly, but it's very profound. So I want to go back to it. It's also reframing the message, because what you said right when you started that last sentence was, it's actually saying yes to things, because I think like what has prevented me from slowing down my pace is, how do I say no to good things? So it's overwhelming of like, what am I going to take off my plate to add here? So in reality, just reframing the message of how do I make my life structure and flow in such a way that I can say yes to these moments that are present in each and every day. Do you have any other, I guess kind of nuggets from the book that you would say can help, individuals or readers, start to implement some of these principles into daily living?
Definitely. I think one thing that comes to mind is just, starting right where we are. I think anytime, any kind of change or victory that we, see that we need in our life, I think it's always easy to think, okay, so I've got to do A, B, and C, and then I can get there. But it's about surrender. It really is. And I think for one of my turning points in my life was just saying, okay, I can't do all these things, Lord. Like, I can't be this and that, and I'm trying, and even these good things you mentioned, that they're good things, but it was too much. And so I think just, I can recall in prayer just saying, Lord, like, what do you want me to do? How, and just hearing, after saying, who do you want me to be, hearing, you're mine. Like, that's who we're called to be, is a child of God. And yes, we're all a creation of God, but surrendering our heart in relationship to Jesus Christ is where it begins. And I think just embracing that life as a child of God, it's fun. God is fun. And I think we forget that sometimes. I think religion can take place of just, we get caught up into the do's and the lists of things, but that relationship piece is really what God calls us to. And I think we can have that regardless of the season of life. We can be in the craziest, hurtful, just survival mode, but we can still have that sweetness and trust and faith and joy and peace and love. And I think that's where
it's hard to hear for somebody that feels like they're in survival mode.
It is. It definitely is. And I think we can't compare our stories to anyone else. And so, as someone listening, I would just say, drop to your knees, like right then and there, and just surrender. I think just knowing, like, look at this mess, but Jesus came into our mess. He was born into this world amidst human mess and came to save it. And so he came to save you. He came to save me and you. And I think that's where it starts. But I think, can get distracted and we forget to hear that message. And so even now, we have all of these devices that ping and they beep and they, you just think like, oh my goodness, like I can't even fold the laundry without, all of these reminders and things that are dinging in the background. But that can also be time, like we have permission to set those aside. Like we can turn those off. We kind of get in that mode where we feel like everyone needs me, but maybe they don't really,
maybe the dishes
maybe it can wait
sit there
till after the bedtime story or after the, I found that, and I talk about this in my book, just, it's like the microwave would be on and I would be returning an email or something. We never slow down. Right. And so, instead of just closing my eyes and reflecting on the day or something, just for 30 seconds while my coffee heats up, I'm like, why is that hard today? But it kind of is.
Sure.
And so,
because you feel the pressure to keep up and you feel, the pressure to compare. And, I think, you brought out this point of using Jesus as the example really kind of transcends gender and age, where all of a sudden now, like, your target audience is really anyone in any phase of life. Because as you mentioned, if you're pointing the example back to how he lived, then it's a kind of a benchmark of a standard of living that we can all kind of ascribe to, you know. And certainly he said yes to lots of things, and certainly was probably less busy than he could have been. There's times where he stopped on his way to see Jairus' daughter, and there's the woman with the bleeding disorder, and he interrupts his schedule, people waiting on him in order to be present in that moment, and still yet fulfilling his mission while not being tied to a schedule. So I don't do that. It's like, it's a hard conversation to have, because you're telling, like, I know where my life needs to go. And so it just means to me that I need to read the book. And I
continue to be convicted as well. I have to reset. I feel like every day it's just part of life, but Christ
have you
more.
Implemented any of that as a parent? And like, cause your daughters are young adults now at this point, and they're entering into that phase where their day-to-day rhythms are kind of their independent choices of what they do. So has that been something that you've tried to handle as a parent?
I think we very much try to be present in the moment a lot. I think with 2 in college and 1, our son is still in high school, and we see as a parent just the time getting away from us more and more. And so, I mean, I was always told when they were younger that, it goes by so fast. And you would think, no, this day at 5 o'clock cannot get here fast enough. But it really does. And I'm here and I look back and I think, wow, it really went fast. And so I think just, cherishing that time and realizing, it's, and everyone has their own giftings. For me, I did kind of get caught up in maybe it wasn't a birthday cake. It was like the best, biggest, most wonderful birthday cake in the world. And it really wasn't about them. It became more about me. And there were moments like that, I think, that I could have learned the hard way and realizing, wow, or I could let her put all the sprinkles on it. It's going to be a mess.
Sure.
It's going to look terrible, but
That's right.
this is a memory she will never forget. And she's going to be proud of it. And so that's hard as a parent, though, I think. And especially now that we post everything, you know, we just have to think, I don't know, I get caught up in that too, of just, we got to put our best forward, and who wants to see your mess? And, you know, but it's, you know, really, is God even asking us to measure?
No, right.
He's not. And I think that's part of that joy. You know, he is where the joy is. And I just, you know, there's so many moments where it's a gift to enjoy, but I think sometimes I would forget that, you know, and I would try to just tailor it or make it perfect, and just simply for no other reason than just, I think that's what a good mom looked like.
Sure.
And so I did it for that reason. And because who wants to be a bad one, you know? But I think just learning, like, maybe I should just listen to the Holy Spirit leading me and convicting me, and you know, rather than.
Well, what's really interesting as we're chatting is you've got really, and it's not rehearsed at all. It's just very genuine language as you kind of jump from season to season. I can tell that you have thought about these things deeply, but you're also, I can almost guarantee that you're not keeping these just to yourself and putting them into a computer screen. Like, you're having these conversations with younger people on a regular basis. My wife being one of them, and you know, she has just mentioned what a blessing you are to her. But what would you say to, let's say, another person who's in your season of life, and you're getting to these young adult children, and your empty nesting is creeping closer, or maybe it's just occurred, and you find this maybe time? How can they find some purpose in maybe reaching back into the, you know, previous stages of life and encountering some moms with this content of how can they, you know, help change the course of another family?
Yeah, you know, we all have our natural giftings, just things that we naturally enjoy or things we're good at. And so I definitely think start there. You know, we think, oh, well, to minister to someone, it has to be, you know, you have to have pages open and you have to be quoting scripture. And while that will naturally come out, I think as you are putting God's word in, it will spill out. But, you know, that can look like sports. That can look like coffee, that can look like play dates at the park, strolling kids. It can look like so many different ways. And so I think just look around and see who is around you, and you know, what kind of things are natural. That's where that organic, I think, discipleship comes. And then truly, you know, looking at your kids as fellow disciples. I think, I don't know at what point, you know, I started to do that, but it helped me be a little more transparent with them and open up to them. And I think about this book, and they were my biggest cheerleaders, my husband and my 3 children. I mean, they would, you know, pray over me, but it started with y'all, like, I need some help. I'm nervous. They prayed over me right before I came here, you know, and there was a note on my car that was like, Mom, you got this. I mean, but how often do we try to like pull it off? Like, yeah, we've got this, you know, we don't.
Right.
And I think just letting that be a family, it's also just really bonding. You know, you realize we do need each other, and those are the best people that, you know, on this earth that we should love and cherish. And so I think some of that comes with just living life with them, you know, through Christ, and showing it's okay to not have it all together. But there's one who does. And so when we show them and model for them to lean on Christ, you know, and what does God's word say, and write it on your heart. So in those moments you can, you know, and it's humbling to hear them say it back to you, but you know that, like, okay, that's what it's all about. You know, it's just, it's them learning to love the Lord and know him and make him known. And then seeing that spill out of them, and being an encourager to yourself is, you know, that's, I think, one of the sweetest moments as a parent that I have had.
Yeah,
you know,
that's very cool. I'm glad you shared that experience. Well, I know your book kind of has content that is really applicable, like we said, across gender, age, but also geography. You know, we're not specific to Clarksville, but you wrote it here, and you're a part of our community and have been for a long time. So, you know, what are some ways that you feel like, you know, the community has embraced it, or, you know, how can it, like, the book add value to our community in general?
Yeah, I love our community. We were kind of one of those typical military families that came, that didn't know anything about Clarksville, just kind of showed up with moving boxes. But here we are 10 years later, and we've had the opportunity to leave, and, we've got great schools and, great proximity to a lot of things in Clarksville. And I love how our city, I think, really rallies behind people. We want to see success for others. And I've seen that in, businesses and places that, have welcomed this book or, have supported me through, even just advertising for the book celebration that we had. It was just really exciting. And one person comes to mind, Tanya DeRose, who I met. She was my hairstylist, and then just over the years really cherished her friendship. But she's the founder and previous owner of Amity Salon, cancer survivor, and just has a really neat story. But I really admire her character and just the way that she rallies behind people in our community. She wants to see them succeed, I think, especially as women. And she's taught me just business skills and confidence and, how to walk in and offer, what we have for one another as Clarksvillians, that we do. There's a lot of just, I think, people that want to inspire other people. And so I see that in our community, and I've seen that through this book. But yeah, really grateful for her. She's taken me under her wing, and I know she's done that for other people too.
Yeah, those kinds of people, you start to ask others about them, and it's like, oh yeah, that's just who they are.
It's who
right?
they are.
And I do think our community has a lot of those types of people, and I'm very grateful for them because it's encouraging people like yourself who may not naturally have had the courage to get out and like put all of this down into paper and written format, and it's out in the world now, and it gets to be a blessing because someone, whether it be your husband, your 3 kids, they have encouraged you along the way.
For sure.
That's really
very
cool.
Grateful.
Well, give us some, little tidbits or something from the book to kind of take away, and maybe like how would you equip someone listening with, hey, here's 1 or 2 practical things. Right now, I know we talked about it some previously of like just be aware of the moment, be aware of being able to say yes to things. Is there anything else that you think you'd want to share, while you have the opportunity?
Absolutely. Well, I'll show you the book first of all. It's Permission to Walk.
On camera. There we go.
A 40-day journey to unhurried peace.
And this is like published. This is not self-published. No discredit to self-publishers or anything, but this is a long process.
It is a long
to pitch
process.
The idea, to put yourself out there, to have people in your business and in your dreams and in your hearts, and like to get this final product in your hand, like gotta feel amazing.
It is. It was probably about a 2-year process to start from concept to publish, to hold a book. I went with Arabelle Publishing, and it's a traditional publishing house, and it is. I think, here I am in my mid-40s, but we're not too old for adventure ever.
No, definitely not.
And so while writing a book was never on my horizon, it definitely became part of my journey. So, but this book, I think one thing, just for a quick little, I guess, how it's set up. But here's, for example, about midway through, help for spiritual dehydration, but each day starts with just a simple prayer. It's a 2-word prayer, and this one is replenish me. I have a list of 40 of those prayers in the back of the book.
Just like Gatorade.
So how often, while you're washing dishes or, seeing a patient, replenish me, Lord, I'm feeling dehydrated. I need you. Just simple words
Everyone
like
can
that.
relate to that.
Everyone can relate to that. So there's 40 of those. This is also a great book to do with small groups. So if you have a small group, what better way to accomplish and finish a journey than with our friends?
Yeah.
And so there's questions in the back that you can have group discussion.
Oh, cool.
And so
are you coming up with all these questions yourself too? Like everything in there is like your content.
Yes,
that is amazing.
I quote a few times, but it really is through just a lot of I guess
where did you write it? Like, what's the location of your writing?
Oh gosh,
all over the place.
My desk, my chair, the car.
Okay.
There was a lot written in like the car line at pickup time.
Oh,
I was,
nice.
in the car in the middle school pickup line.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Sure.
But the back of it just says, how can we truly be at peace with ourselves, our world, and God in a society that prefers constant movement and distraction? And so that would just be, my question is, are you tired of the world setting the pace for your daily life? And if you are, then this book is definitely for you. It is written towards women, but I've been told men have found it applicable as well.
I have no doubt. And I think that I think I could say that without much looking into the book after hearing you speak about it and hearing how you've structured it, that yes, there's probably some like feminine draw in just of like examples of how life is written, but this could easily be used by anyone.
I think so. I tell a lot of stories in it.
Yeah.
It's not just academically written. It's kind of, story driven as well. So I hope
and it's
that's
available
relatable.
Lots of different places, right?
It is. It's online. Of course, we all shop at Amazon, so
Yeah.
that's the easy one. It's also online at barnesandnoble.com and Books A Million.
Yeah.
And so, it can be purchased online.
So I would encourage you, buy one for yourself and a few for some friends and go through it together.
Absolutely.
Because if you're like me and you're hurried, you're good for about 11 days by yourself.
Right.
And the last 29
Right.
just end up in another year, another decade probably.
Yes.
But if you got some friends, that's about the only key to get all the way to day 40.
Absolutely. And it's fun to hear about those finishers. I've had a lot of good feedback.
Yeah, I do want to hear that. Like, what feedback have you heard from others?
I think, and where I start the book is maybe addressing a reader who doesn't even know they're hurried. And so I think that's been some of the feedback is like, wow, I never knew I needed permission, or like, I never even thought of myself as like hurried, or, but I think just kind of knowing like you can start anywhere, that has been some of the positive feedback, and that just, they have a place to start. As a reader, I found that I just, I didn't like books that would leave me kind of right where I started, and that was one of my main goals, was like to leave readers with tangible things they could start today.
Cool.
And so I hope to offer that for readers.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment. Like, didn't know I needed permission, and like, I'm not saying anything negative about my parents at all, but it's I remember my dad saying, like, people with purpose walk 25% faster. So we're going to walk faster. Like, you're going through the airport, he's walking faster. Through the mall, he's walking faster. It's like walking into church, he's just a fast walker, but he does it with intention. And it's like, oh, we could just slow down, like we don't have to always be in a hurry. And it's, I think it's a symptom of all of us, unless we were really willing to address it. But probably a lot of those moments where like, I didn't even think about that as being a moment of hurry, because it's been so ubiquitous in my daily living that, the 4:30 alarm and then the 5 a.m. gym start time is, it seems like it's a long time, and it seems like I've got time to like, okay, wake up and breathe, but it's not. It's a rush. It's a rush to get there. It's a rush to then get into the office, doing this, for those who work, just rush. It's just kind of our culture.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks so much for telling us about this. Thanks for telling us where we can find it. It is really an inspiration, both of, how you have made the simple choices to be aware of your daily living, but then having the courage to get it on paper. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being a blessing to our community. And I'm sure you're touching amazing lives there at Living Hope on a regular basis, but this is going to extend beyond Clarksville. It's going to extend beyond our generation. And once you get it out into your hands, it's like, this is going to have rippling effects for a long time. So thank you for all the hard work and, making use of those moments in the car, in the kitchen, or wherever to get it all down. I know it was a really long process, and should say thank you to your family as well, because I'm sure there was lots of moments where A, they encouraged you, but B, mom's writing. This is what she's doing right now.
Yep, absolutely. There were some bowls of cereal nights, and that was okay.
Yeah.
We have permission to do that. It's okay.
Yeah, if husband's in charge of dinner tonight, you guys are on your own. Fend for
big
yourselves.
cheerleaders. I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. It is really interesting to hear more about the content and the writing process, And I would just say, if anyone is interested, as you're listening, you can hop on over to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, anywhere there.
Yeah.
Find that content, get the book. Like I said, buy one for yourself, buy a couple others while you're there in the cart, add a few more in to give away to make sure that you've got the tools that you need to make it all the way to the end. If you happen to see Megan around town, definitely say hey, say thanks for the book, even if you've not read it yet, just for the attempt and the effort that goes into getting something out into the world. She is another author here in our community, just like we've mentioned some other authors in past episodes. And we're really grateful to have amazing people like Megan and like some of our other guests who get to share their story and get to bring their content to us and then give it to the whole world right here from Clarksville, Tennessee. Thanks so much for making it to the end of this episode. Thanks for catching us. We encourage you to go back, listen to other episodes, reach out to us with feedback. We love to hear that. Leave some comments in social media channels. These sometimes come and go, and we love to interact with you in any way that we can. But hey, thanks for being a part of our online community where we get to share the message of why Clarksville, Tennessee is the best place to live in America. Thanks so much.